Okay, so we'll dive straight into it, lads. We've got Tom Lindsay, former hooker at Bedford Blues, Nick Fenton Wells, who became a hooker but was definitely a back rower, flanker /8, and captain at the Blues, and Chris Czekaj, who enjoyed 2 seasons here, full back and then latterly at inside centre. Just going to talk, first of all, about joining the Blues. Yeah, we won't talk yet why you were then at 12 checks, don't worry. A link to Bristol already, but we'll talk a little bit about how you signed. So Tom, we'll start with you. Obviously a bit of a journey for you, and we've heard you recently on other podcasts talk about it, but 10 years at Wasps, brief spell at Gloucester and then at Saracens, and probably needing to rediscover some love for rugby.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, so I was at Sarries at the time, and I got approached to play your what's it called again? I've got
the Mobs match.
Mobs Memorial game. That's right. Yeah. So I played in that game. Really enjoyed it. It was great fun playing at Goldenton Road. And I spoke to Mike Rare afterwards, and I think a dialogue kind of formed from there. And from that, you guys offered me a contract, and it was a great opportunity. And yeah, definitely, it was trying to fall in love with rugby again, and I got the opportunity there, and was very appreciative of it.
Nick, over to you. Obviously, similar story in terms of Saracens link. You came on loan, knew a bit about the club before you actually signed full-time. What was the story behind that? Obviously, no doubt you came to the country from South Africa to make your way with Saracens, but found yourself at Goldenton Road.
Yeah, my first season, I actually only signed as a medical joker for 6 months at Saracens, and they then extended my contract. But after that, so as I came in as a medical joker, when the guys all came back fit, then obviously I found myself without rugby. So my first season at Sarries, I went on loan to Bedford, and sort of walked through the gates and immediately fell in love with the place. So yeah, I picked up an injury. I had osteitis pubis at the end of that season, had groin operation, and was out for most of the preseason, and then went on full-time loan to Bedford from Saracens again, which was great. But then I found myself sort of between both clubs, because being on full-time loan, they still required my services at Saracens for training, and then I was traveling up in the evenings to train with Bedford, and I just, it got to a point where it was just too much, and made the decision to sign full-time at Bedford in my 3rd season there, and then stayed for a couple of years after that.
And once you signed, quickly got the captaincy as well. So was that a kind of big step for you in joining Bedford? And obviously you actually moved up to living here.
Yeah, so Mike spoke to me about it after my season-long loan spell, and wasn't necessarily part of the contract. He spoke to me about it when we sat down to discuss the finer detail, and it's kind of one of those things that you don't really turn down, do you? It's just an epic opportunity, a club rich with rugby history, and obviously one that you would like to associate your name with as club captain. So it was pretty cool.
And Czeks, over to you. You obviously had a long stint with Cardiff Blues, obviously ended up playing a bit in France, and this was your first taste of the Championship and signing for Bedford. So what brought you to Goldenton Road?
Yeah, as you said, I was out in France for a couple of years, and I wanted to come back. I sort of didn't know where to, and obviously known Mikey Raya from my academy days at Cardiff. I sent him a message, and then within a few months an offer came, so which was brilliant. And I spent 2 of the most enjoyable years I've had in rugby there.
You mentioned Mike Raya there. It must have been obviously a big impact in you signing across, but it was difficult, not just were you moving yourself back, but your family, who continue to live in Wales, moving to Bedford. So was that, all part of the consideration for you joining?
Yeah, we sort of didn't really know what to do to start with. Obviously, Bedford being a 3-hour drive away from Cardiff, and we already had a property in Cardiff to come back to. So initially we thought we'd come over, just go back and live in Cardiff, and then think about moving up then, but it didn't work out in the end. So I ended up living with you, Gareth, for a couple of years. So I was up and back a lot. So I was driving up and back a lot, and which towards the end was quite difficult. But yeah, as you said, obviously worked with Mikey back when I started in the academy with Cardiff Blues. So obviously knew him from there. Played for Cardiff RFC when he was coach there for a few games. It was great to link up with him again, and I heard a few things about Bedford being a great club and good fun and good social side of it. So I was looking forward to it, and it turned out to be exactly that.
I can add you're a fantastic housemate, Czeks. Most good-looking housemate I've ever had. There we go. Linda, on to you. We'll just talk a little bit about your memories at the Blues then. Were there any standout memories from that season? Obviously, it went very well for you, went very well for the club, and you obviously earned that move to Bristol. But what were the best memories you have?
I think pre-season playing against Sarries was always, I think I've heard it's always fun, that pre-season game. So that was amazing playing in that game. The week before we played Plymouth, I remember, and I remember how hot it was. That summer was so hot. So when we played against Sarries, we actually had a decent game against them. Half time we were doing all right, and then the second half they just brought on their bench of 10 internationals or whatever it was, and it was still fun. But that was one of my memories. Second memory was beating Munster away. That was in the quarter-final of the B&I Cup, which was a huge win because it was a close game the entire game. It was pretty. It's a hard crowd, as you know. Playing in Ireland is quite tough, but no, it was a great game, and getting through to the semi-final against Ealing was class. I won't talk about that though, obviously.
Yeah.
But, and my last memory would be off the pitch, going to Bruges. It was that was an incredible trip. I'd heard about Bedford's Bedford's mid-season kind of trips away, and it was a great cultural experience to be with the boys. I didn't really see much of Bruges, or I don't remember much of Bruges, but it was a fantastic binder for the team. So we just felt closer as a team, and I think Mike Rare's honestly got that perfect with the boys, not doing a pre-season tour or anything, and you just felt so close to everyone. Everyone had your back. There was respect through staff to players, and it was just a great experience and something I'm going to hold very dear to my heart.
Was that quite different to maybe a Browns pre-season trip with Bristol then?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, there was still Bedford's Got Talent was still Bristol Got Talent, but yeah, it was a different experience. I have been on other club experiences like that before, but yeah, Bristol's was very different. Put it that way.
So obviously, including two of those memories there. Probably a mention for George Edsham. I remember him running the social media actually at Munster, probably most entertaining media we've had, and I remember him being a bit of a star of the trip to Bruges. So Czeks, that kind of leads nicely on to you and your memories. We'll start on the social first with you, and then talk about the playing.
So yeah, Bruges again is one of the best trips I've been on with a rugby team. And normally when you go on rugby trips, you end up doing a bit of rugby. This had no rugby involved at all. So, as Linda said, it was just one of those trips where everyone sort of gelled together. We just had the best time, and obviously it was a comfortable trip as well. It's a couple of places that we went to, but yeah, some of the best memories, and we talk about it now with some of the boys as well. I keep in touch with about how good that trip was and how it blended us as a team.
And on the park, Czeks?
Sorry?
And on the park, any memories?
Yeah, probably the personal memory for me, like the first game up in Jersey that I played in when I was playing fullback. So it was the first season I was there, and we ended up winning the game. And me personally, I had a really good game, probably the best game I'd had up to that point with Bedford. And it was just a great to go away to Jersey and get a win, which is amazing. So so that game probably sticks out more than any. Second game is probably Nottingham at home. I can't remember which year it was now. I scored
2017, Czeks.
Yeah,
You managed to grab a hat trick.
I did, yeah. First hat trick I'd had for about 10 years, I think. So I was happy with that, and it was obviously a great game for me personally. So enjoyed that one.
And what about memories of obviously moving across to 12? Now, we joked about it, but, Mike Rare himself, I listened on a Cardiff Blues podcast the other week that, he actually ended his time at Cardiff playing in the 12 and 13 shirt where he could add a bit more value and probably lost his legs a little bit towards the end of his career. So was that part of the similar idea? Were you also hoping to add more to the lads around you?
Yeah, well, it wasn't my idea. It was Mike's idea, which was a correct one really, because I was getting on a bit. and losing a bit of my pace to be at full back and having to run back and forth at the back there was very tiring. I'm quite glad he moved him in, and I really enjoyed the season I played at 12. I played quite a lot of games, ended up playing quite a lot of games at 12, and it may have been because of one particular incident against a certain Bristol. All the boys tell me it was that. Although I didn't play full back then after that, so it probably was, to be honest. But yeah, look, I went into 12 and I enjoyed it, and probably the position I most enjoyed during my career now.
Should have still been Dean's ball, shouldn't it? Not yours to cover that one off.
Yeah, probably. Dicko shouldn't have kicked it. He said that in the meeting after. So we'll blame him.
That box kick was atrocious.
He said, it was his fault.
Yeah, I don't think anything has ever been Dicko's fault, boys. Never been Dicko's fault. Nick, you've got many memories, obviously, across your time, and there must be a few standout ones on and off the pitch.
Yeah, I have to start my first season. We made it to the final against Newcastle Falcons, which was epic. I mean, and to be honest, for what we were in terms of a club versus what they had, we weren't far off the pace at all. And I think we ended up losing out by 8 points on aggregate in the 2 games. I mean, I could say the social after that was unreal as well. A lot of times I had to thank Toops for rescuing me in certain situations, and I think that was one of those evenings. From a playing point of view, definitely playing with Toops was quite an entertaining experience, partly because he'd sort of on the regular knock himself out, and then you'd have to go and check on him every 10 minutes because he just refused to go off the pitch. But yeah, those particularly, but then playing Nottingham in the semi-final actually of that year, it was such an awesome game. We got off to a flyer, and with about 20 minutes to go, Nottingham stepped up the pace, and it was really close at the end of it. But it was one of the better games that we had played as a team. And then my final season there was just one of the most enjoyable seasons that I'd had. I think that post that final, in my first season, we saw a lot of players move on naturally. Often happens at Bedford, unfortunately, because they do so well that other clubs pick up players for relatively good prices, and therefore we struggled for 2 years. Finishing 9th and 10th respectively in the league, and just to see sea change in a season after that, building, over those 2 years to my final season there, we pulled together a really good squad. And yeah, it was, every away fixture was entertaining. Playing at home in front of the Goldington Road faithful was just epic. I mean, the support was outstanding, and it was just, that season in particular was just, super enjoyable.
You mentioned teammates there, and actually just thinking, Nick, about that season particularly, we did have a good group, but we didn't bring in, probably a host of players in the same way as when Czekaj and Linda were there, when we brought in kind of Dicko in that one season, obviously Tom himself, we had a few players coming back, A-Ray bringing a lot of experience. So, that side actually that you were talking about there, Nick, came out of the side that had finished 9th and 10th respectively the seasons prior. So what was the kind of change to be able to get you to improve that season?
Yeah, I think that's why it was so enjoyable, is that group of players stayed together the core group stayed together for, 2-3 seasons. And by the time we got to that season, 15-16, it was, we had become really close mates. As Linda mentioned about their trip to Bruges, that's what you get at Bedford, especially when you keep players together for a long time, is you get that sense of camaraderie, but like you're a real family. We never had a big squad, so everybody, became mates, and it was just an epic season.
I mean, you mentioned Toops. That's an obvious one that has pretty much had an impact on every Blues player's life across the last 10 years. Any other teammates that particularly made your times enjoyable, lads? Tom, anything that you kind of created those, even in one season, made that relationship?
Going back to what Fenton said, I only played with Toops a couple of times. because he was transitioning into another role. But training with Toops was just probably the hardest playing against him. Like, he was always trying to knock him out, like, constantly. So, like, it was good though. He needed that bit of grit and a bit of dog in training as well. But talking about some of the players in the team, Blanche, like, someone who, when playing against him, watching him try and tackle people, it actually scared me. Like, honestly, putting himself in those positions and chopping people that low. George Edison, honestly, an absolute character of a player, like a great player as well on the pitch. But off the pitch, he had it nailed on how to get boys up every day. Like, even when he was sapping, he still managed to get boys smiling and stuff like that. Dicko was class. Like, he was like the father of the squad. He looked after the boys, and he managed to get the best out of everyone as well, while still trying to remain in the youngest social circles as possible, just to make him feel young, which I really enjoyed that. But there were so many. Ed Taylor, he was great on the pitch, but off the pitch, I've never known someone to be such a social, I don't know, talisman, I'd say, like, honestly.
Glad you said that rather than grenade. But,
no, I was the grenade. He was the social talisman, which, again, going back to what Fenton said, that kind of gel between the team. Like, you have different characters, and Mikey does it so well to get the right people at the right club. I don't know if I've never really heard anyone play at a team at Bedford where they didn't really get on and get rid of them. So, and the last person to talk about is Booge. Booge was one of the best players I've ever played rugby with. I'd say, like, someone who was just so naturally talented, and I hope to see him kick on more at Wasps, because I think he's one of the best players I've played with, as I said.
Yeah, and real talent for us as well. Interesting you say about Edson. I think made you all laugh at times off the field. He probably made us cry, but he certainly has a lot of quality and a lot of value for the side. And you mentioned Toops as well. Again, I mean, reoccurring theme. Checks, you stayed on a year longer, and when Toops fully had retired, and occasionally then just came back in to training to, it would seem, kill boys. How much of a challenge was it when you had a player like that hunting after you in a training session, and actually giving you quite a lot of abuse for being the old man, I think?
He did, yeah. No, he's got 10 years on me. No, he did. He came back to a bit of coaching, and he used to just stay involved in the sessions and train with us. And he'd always be the one hitting someone, getting involved in rush, making him a mess, just like he was doing the year before. But obviously he retired. But yeah, good bloke to have around, and he's a massive part of that club for a long time. So he's a great bloke as well. One person we haven't mentioned is Josh Bajir. He's another one, sort of like Edgy. He was the butt of everyone's jokes, but he craved that and he loved it. And he always had little acts that he used to do, songs and sing. He's always doing something.
I remember on that trip to Bruges, we did a quiz on the bus on the way there. I think one of the rounds was like meat and areas of like cows. And Budgie was telling all the boys how he's just finished his butcher's course. He's going into butchery. He got every answer wrong.
Please don't say that. Please don't say that. One, I fitted him out with that job, and he's actually now just doing some butchery work as we speak.
Mate, honestly, you didn't know where like parts of the part anything was. I was like, "Where's the fillet on a cow?" He's like, "Got no idea, mate. No idea."
What is he responsible for? Just mincing?
No comment added there, but we'll get back on a serious note. Nick, actually you mentioned Budgie, and actually we mentioned Justin earlier. It was actually that back row that you have to admit you probably deserve a lot of the plaudits for improving those two players. And actually you're one of your final years, Budgie got players player, where you moved to 8 and he was playing more often in the 7 shirt. What was it like working with Josh and Justin? And as you say, those first 2 difficult years, and then that final year of getting to the playoffs.
Working with those two was epic. I think a lot of it was around the fact that they kind of sort of had attributes that I had, but then they also offered things that I didn't. So we spent a lot of time learning off each other, which was great, and it wasn't just me sort of trying to help them out. They helped me as much as I could help them. But I think, in terms of two boys who just put everything into what they did, those two, they gave heart and soul to Bedford in my seasons there, and both outstanding players. And as Linda said, I mean, for where Justin Blanchet puts his head occasionally is just beyond me. But I guess that was I had the pleasure of playing with his brother, Sam, and I mean, also unreal player, but used to do things and knock himself out regularly. It was just beyond me where these guys, or how they learned to tackle in the first place. I mean, Justin's probably got a conventional leg chop, but occasionally that conventional leg chop, his head was on the wrong side, probably more than one occasion. But yeah, unfortunately, that's what I think ended his career, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. Him and Sam.
And same with Sam. So, but yeah, I mean, there were a couple of characters in my first season there. Sash Harding, Darren Fox, Neil Cochran, just a few absolute legends. Those are just mentioning a few, but I guess that was sort of that was the epitome of Bedford Blues when I first arrived, and that's what the club was about, and when those guys started moving on, the plan was to try and recreate that, obviously with a younger squad, and I think that we kind of did that, and by the sounds of it, when Chex and Linda were there, it just continued, and that's culture. That's what the Blues are about, and I know that anybody that walks through the gates of Goldington Road just loves the place.
We'll move on to talking about life after rugby then, and I'll move to you, Linda, first. There's been a lot of podcasts recently from you about your mental health and things that have been really, I think, really prevalent for a lot of rugby players as well. But just want to talk a little bit, moving that on to where you are now and what the next steps are for you.
So I've been coaching a long time, about 10 years. Children, elderly, disabled children, a variety in schools, state schools, community projects, and stuff like that. I coached, coaching at the moment with Bristol Bears Women. Been coaching there for 2 years. I was doing it kind of freelance before. Then last year I became officially their forwards coach, and then looking forward to next season whenever it starts again. I'm hopefully going to be the assistant head coach, which is still up in the air at the moment. But yeah, with that as well, I'm doing my level 3 personal training course with Fenton. So we're hopefully going to both get that soon. And also I'm doing loads of stuff mental health wise as well. I'm a mental health first aider, and I'm also doing a few podcasts and skills sessions with schools around the country as well. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. I'm looking forward to continuing my coaching route. Where I want to go, I'm not sure. I want to be an academy coach, and I don't think I could spend 7 till 7 every day and then watching games Saturday and Sunday. I'm trying to work out what I'm going to do that, whether it be underpinning my coaching with the girls with personal training. But I've got a few options, which is good.
Good. Czek's obviously similarly involved in coaching, actually coached in our Blues community setup when you were up here and did quite a lot of work with youngsters. It was an obvious pathway for you, and obviously you had some challenges in that early doors, even having to step out of rugby into a recruitment role. But you found your way back in now as a development officer, a hub officer with the WRU. Talks about that transition.
Yeah, as you said, I managed to find some work in recruitment straight after Bedford. So I did that for 6 months. It didn't take me long before I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. Having never sat in an office on the phone, I don't know if any of you have experienced it, boys, but yeah, it wasn't for me. So an opportunity came up to be a WRU hub officer. So now I work in Bishop Llandaf High School in Cardiff, running the rugby there, and also working with the local clubs in the surrounding area. So it's just really the community game at the moment.
And obviously you signed from Bedford for Merthyr, who obviously are a part-time club, but one of the bigger clubs in Wales, certainly have spent a bit of money in recent years to compete at the higher end. But you obviously took on some coaching roles and have now been appointed at, is it St. Joseph's?
Yeah.
Some stuff with, tell us about senior coaching. Is that an ambition or line you'd like to get more involved with?
It is, yeah. And over the last, since I've been at Bedford, I've been working through my levels of coaching qualifications, and I was a 20-minute presentation away from completing my level 3 before everything got locked down. So not quite finished it, but hopefully I can get that sorted in the next month or so. But yeah, on the back of that, I've not coached, taking the team through a season, the same group of players. So this was like sort of the first opportunity I've got to do that with St. Joe's. So and I grew up in the area where they're from, and a couple of my really good friends are part of the club as well. So I thought it would be the best way to start the journey, really.
Absolutely. Do you think that's for all three of you something really kind of paid quite useful at Bedford, that you had some time to develop your life outside of rugby? The training regime is a little bit lighter than obviously most full-time clubs. So is that something that helped you by having that time to develop yourselves off the field? Anyone get on it?
Go on, Czekaj. After you.
Yeah, definitely for me. Yeah, as when I arrived at Bedford, I wasn't sure. I was sort of thinking about life after rugby, but wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And to be able to do that bit of coaching in the primary schools I did up there was really valuable to me, and I did it over 2 years and gained a lot of experience doing it. So yeah, I think it's great, and I know a lot of the other boys were doing other things alongside rugby as well. So that time we get to do that is pretty valuable.
Nick,
yeah.
Sorry, Linda, jump in.
I was going to say, I think when you do get the opportunity to play rugby in the championship, and you have got loads of time on your hands, if you're not full time, I think you'd be naive, maybe slightly arrogant, to not throw yourself into something else or try out different things, especially if you're coming towards the end of your career, which myself and Czekaj were at that point. And it's important that people understand that you're not going to play rugby forever at all. I know when you're younger, it's kind of a case of, I'm going to play, I'm invincible, I'm not going to get injured, I'm going to keep playing. But you've got to remember, life after rugby is so important, and putting some foundations wherever you can, speak to sponsors, fans, whatever. They want to talk to you. You're a rugby player at the end of the day. So making sure you kind of are aware that you need to make sure something's there when you finish.
Absolutely. Nick, I remember, or I'm trying to remember, forgive me if I'm incorrect, but I think you were doing a management degree at the time that you were also in Bedford.
Yeah, I did my MBA through Durham University Business School when I was, I started when I moved to Surrey. It was a bit of a shock to me because they asked what I was going to do away from rugby, and I was like, nah, I'm just here to play rugby, which is a typical South African mentality, unfortunately. And they were like, no, that's not what you do. You play rugby, but you have to have something on the side because you've got extra time. And the professional development manager encouraged me to enroll for this MBA program, and I did, and thankfully got onto it. But it was actually while I was at Bedford where I had a bit more time to be able to focus on my studies as well. So it was a fairly intensive course over a 3-year period of literally just hammering it out on days that I wasn't training or in between sessions. And I managed to get it done, thankfully.
And tell us a bit about you now, Nick. Obviously, we don't like to talk too much about Bristol, having pinched you and Lindsay from us, but obviously you're in a team manager role there and set up your own gym and business. Yeah,
so Linda's alluded to it already. You want to start preparing for life after rugby while you're playing, and there's no better time to start than, when you're 18, but you don't really think about it then. And once I'd finished my MBA, I was thinking what the next sort of thing for us to do would be. And my brother, has a lot of experience, probably 10 to 15 years in the health and wellness, professional sports and fitness industry. He'd been working as a general manager in South Africa and wanted to come over, and it was just, with having acquired the new business skills that I had, it just made sense to try and get a business off the ground. So I started that with my brother when I was in my second last season at Bristol. And I also I sort of oversaw the community engagement between the squad and Bristol Bears Community Foundation. And having done that for the 2 years that Pat had come in, once I retired, he decided, thought it was a good idea to offer me the team manager role. That's still left to be decided by him whether or not it was a good idea. But I just couldn't pass up the opportunity because we're very happy in Bristol. Obviously, Bristol's on the vision of the club is outstanding, and I really believe in it. And I think the direction in which the club is going would have been completely mad not to accept the job opportunity. It was the ideal transition role, and probably not sort of the typical one that a professional rugby player would take post rugby, if you were to get involved in rugby. But there's been a lot of learning around operations, logistics, relationships, and commercial. But it's been a very, very enjoyable transition.
Absolutely. I mean, we can probably give you a current appraisal with Tom in the room, but I'm sure also the leadership qualities that you brought to Bedford are probably evident and useful when you move into a role such as team manager. How does he do, Tom?
Mate, it was class. It was seamless coming in. I think players themselves forget how hard that is to come in and almost detach yourself from the players who you've been playing with for so many years and friends and relationships and the banter and stuff like that. You've got to remember you've stepped over that line now, and now you're a staff member, and that must have been so hard for Fenton. So I hugely look up to him for that. And now I'm retired. It's nice that we can have a chat now and probably catch up. But he does everything well. Like, boys didn't give him too much flack. I know the team managers always get flack all the time. And to be honest, in the season where we was team manager, everything ran pretty smoothly. To be honest, we had pre-season trips, we had trips to France and all that kind of stuff, and it went pretty well. There's only one time I remember we got to the airport in France, I think, for the game against Stade, and we went outside. And the bus wasn't there, and it wasn't there for an hour and a half, and I just felt so bad. I was like, I don't know what had happened. I think the bus driver just messed up. It wasn't Fenton's fault, but I was just panicking for the man.
I can already imagine Rob Crowell in that position, so I can imagine the panic. Obviously, that's probably where you learnt all the team manager skills from, Nick.
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, Linda and I actually have a scheduled coffee in tomorrow to chat about life after rugby and a few things that we need to get sorted here. But I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges, as Linda alluded to, was sort of forming that boundary when you become so close with your teammates and then moving straight out into a management role. It's quite tough. But no, I'll tell you the quick story about France. We arrived in Paris, and the bus was booked, and Charles de Gaulle's quite a big airport. And there's only sort of one area that's the buses service. So there was a lone bus literally sitting in the bus depot. And I went up to the bus driver and I was like, mate, he didn't speak great English, but he was like, I asked him if that was our bus for Bristol Bears. And he said no. And I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. Well, I got on the phone. I was ringing the travel company. I was ringing the bus company. I was ringing whoever I could get hold of. I could see the players were getting fidgety. They didn't know what was going on. It wasn't that warm. There were strikes going on in France. It was a bit of a nightmare. Anyway, ended up speaking to the bus driver directly. He had been sat there for an hour. That was our bus. And we were looking at it for an hour trying to figure out where the bus was. Anyway, he apologized profusely. And we managed to get it sorted. But to say I was sweating bullets is an understatement.
You obviously said the wrong team, Nick. You should have said Bedford Blues. You'd have been straight on that bus. They would have known it was social. Anyway, it is a Bedford Blues podcast, so I'll bring it back to a final question, and that is just to ask you a little bit about, I guess, the current rugby picture and actually how important, therefore, it is to be enjoying your rugby. You've all mentioned that kind of ability at Bedford to combine life after rugby, work, enjoyment, social, and teammates. So, just looking at the current landscape, how important do you think it is, for clubs like Bedford Blues to keep that culture and keep that atmosphere within? Linda?
I think Bedford is. There are loads of championship clubs that are of great rugby history and I think Bedford is so important. It's a home for rugby players that are playing in the Championship for a long time and trying to push up to the Premiership. It's a home for players that have left the Premiership and want to enjoy their rugby again, or whatever it's going to be. And I think Mike Rare and the coaching team and the staff have got it so right. And people want to go to Bedford. I speak to people all the time that are in the Championship, they call me like, "Oh, I'm going to go and play in the Championship. Which clubs do you think I should go for?" I said, "Mate, I don't know all the clubs, but Bedford, I wouldn't. I know Jersey, I know Ealing, but I wouldn't send anyone else. But go to Bedford. It's the best club one of the best clubs I've been involved in, and it's got so right. And it's so important that the club needs to try whatever they can do to get through this period. I know a lot of clubs are in a lot of problems at the moment, but it'd be a huge loss to the English rugby if the Championship folded or whatever it was. And we need to do as much as we can to make sure clubs like Bedford are still being able to function. And it's the community as well. I think Bedford Rugby Club is absolutely huge for Bedford itself. They've got I think they have the second highest through the gate every season, obviously, apart from the team that comes down from the Prem. So it shows how big it is in the community. And I still have people contacting me now on Twitter or Instagram that came and supported us and supported me when I was playing there. So it is a place that's very dear to my heart, and I think it would be a huge loss if anything did happen to the Championship.
Checks. I think Tom's covered most areas probably, but
sorry.
No, I was just echoing what he says. Really, as he said, Bedford's a great club, and I've said it. I'll say it again. I've had the best 2 years of my career there. The most fun. Enjoyed my rugby for the most I ever did. So and it is hugely important to enjoy what you do. As I mentioned earlier, in recruitment, wasn't enjoying that. And life was bad then. And then as soon as I get back into rugby, back into coaching and playing a bit, then life's much better. So as you say, it is hugely important to enjoy what you do. And
I think that's what's the critical part, Chris. Actually, is don't call you Chris, Chet, is that you enjoy what you do. And I remember having a coffee, probably made by you, that actually it's about finding that. And recruitment was always probably going to be a challenge for you, but you've got to try these things and find what's the right mix for you. Nick, obviously, similarly to you, I know you've been pretty driven in terms of where you've gone and what you've achieved, but how much is that enjoyment factor at Bedford kind of key for why you were here and why you enjoyed your time here?
Yeah, huge. It was massive. I think that professional rugby at the end of the day becomes a job at times. And when you're at Bedford, it didn't really feel like that. You're still doing it because of the love that you had for the game and the style of rugby that they played. And Tom mentioned it as well. The community in and around Bedford is just, rugby is so central to them, and it's just an epic place to play. But I think you asked about the landscape of what rugby looks like. I think I hope personally that the Championship doesn't fold. And I think one area that they could really focus on is that exact thing of giving players the opportunity to focus on life or personal development in life after rugby while playing at such an awesome club at such a great level. And it's definitely a sell point. And I think it's something that should be, utilized as best as possible, because I don't think personally that I'd be in this situation if I didn't have the time to do my masters while I was at Bedford and play at such a high level. It gave me the opportunity to do both. And players, they'll be looking for that. They'll be looking for, what they're going to do next and what their transition looks like. And God, there's no better place to go and play rugby than Goldington Road and Bedford, while building your expertise and just giving you a bit of confidence for what your transition might look like out of professional rugby.
Nick, you've just summarised our piece and our strategy quite nicely and where we are. And look, I think first and foremost, we are doing everything we can to make sure that this club survives and will be in a strong place. We've kind of activated a few more kind of community initiatives, followed some of the Bristol things with having a women's team and having a foundation actually. But we're excited to look ahead, even be it in a very difficult and challenging period.